Well, good morning, folks, and thanks for coming. And first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the community group out here in Lamont and Destiny and John. I got to tell you, I think you guys were such an important part of getting to this point. And let me just be clear, this is not George W. on the freaking aircraft carrier saying mission accomplished, right? This is corrections. The mission's never accomplished, all right? But I think the county deserves significant credit for taking this step. That it's been a rough 15, I'm looking around because we spent a lot of time together, some not very pleasant, right? Miss Destiny. But honestly, that's what it takes, you know? If you've been to therapy, if you've been to confession, it's like you got to get it out. And there's some stuff we had to get out here. We had to build a system that the community could believe in. And part of that was like really identifying what's wrong and putting those pieces in place and putting structures in place so it doesn't keep happening in the same way. So if something bad does happen, we actually find out about it, right? And we address it, and we have the courage to talk about it. And that really had to happen before we could even think about bringing anybody in. And to correctly contextualize this, you know, when COVID happened, the prison was already headed towards crisis, and that there was a fuse that was lit that blew up during COVID. And nationally, if you look at what's going on in corrections, you see vacancy rates similar to yours, 25 to 45%. And simply put, what happens here is what's happening everywhere. The demand on your correctional staff is here. The amount of resources, staffing resources you have is here. And in this gap is where all the bad stuff happens, right? So you got two options. You lift the floor, right? Almost impossible. And they're trying to lift the floor by trying to recruit more people, right? But if you look at what the research is, and I can share the article with you, there's a down year trajectory for sworn officer positions nationally, right? So staffing alone is not going to do it. That means we have to reduce demand on the system. So you can't just open the doors and let people out of prison and jail who need to be in prison and jail. I mean, it's an option some people are trying, frankly, but it ain't working, right? So you have to find ways where, one, you're right size and you make sure you have a diversion infrastructure, which you do, which we actually quantified, showed you've reduced the number of mentally ill folks in here by 10% by doing stepping up, starting in what, 18, George, 17, 18? So you've shown it's that kind of stuff. Let's right size. Let's make sure people aren't staying there longer. Like we're processing them through courts. But when you look at this demand, when courts shut down, courts didn't shut down. A lot of the court employees shut down, but those functions were shifted out here. And so the demand up, up, and up. So what we tried to do is start pushing the demand down. Some of that's being more efficient, right? Some of that's partnering with the community. Some of that's not having people return. And that's looking at systemic stuff. Right? So we had to stabilize the prison. We had to get the community engaged, and we had to make sure we had a team in place that cared about the community and cared about people who lived and worked there. Because if anybody thinks that there's any circumstance in any correctional facility in America where officers are doing great and incarcerated people are doing horrible, or vice versa, you're crazy. Everybody's fate is linked. And I would argue that the fate of the community is linked to the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system starts at the prison. That's how it works. And especially for poor, black and brown people, the criminal justice system is such a part, just a normal part of our life. As sad as that is. It just is. That it has to matter. And you have a team that knows it matters. You have a prison board who made the decision to go through this painful process. So yeah, we're not done. The mission is not accomplished, but we've made big strides, and we stabilized the place. You have the right leadership team. I actually think you have one of the best leadership teams around. I mean, and you got work to do. The work isn't done. Long way to go. We really have to work on middle management. We really have to stabilize that. We have to be more responsive. We have to de-escalate everything out there even more. We have to really look at how we use the prison and the function and work releases. There are ways we can do that with not having people like costing us a bunch of money and costing them opportunities to be in the community. We have to continue to look at that stuff. We've stabilized and we have a place where at least if something bad happens, which it always will, you know about it and you can trust that they will respond in the proper manner. You have an internal affairs guy, one of the best in the country. I'm lucky, I bet You see, I'm rusty with this press conference stuff. You know, one of the best in the country. Like BOP, big loss for BOP, right? It's amazing. But here's someone whose values in the right place and wants to be in a community and close to home. It's awesome, you know? So we stabilize, and then we got to do the systems work. And systems work requires everybody to work together. It's not silos. It's not, oh, I got this great program. I got this here, I got this here, I got this here. Because all those gaps, when someone falls through one of those cracks, they end up in a jail cell, and they end up at DCP. And we don't need that, right? So we bring somebody in who has unquestioned criminal justice, lifelong criminal justice credibility, to look from a system standpoint and in a community engaged, focused approach. You can't do any of this work separate from the community. It can't happen. Because the jail and how we respond to crime is a reflection of the community. So it has to be responsive and respectful of the community's will, right? And that's what John embodies to me. So, you know, Commissioner Priest said something that I think I would really want to highlight. Pennsylvania has a prison board structure, right? Where you have these commissioners and district attorney, judge, county controller, sheriff, who have other duties, who are elected, you chose to do other stuff, who, you know, we expect to once a month come have a meeting and have meaningful oversight and understanding of a facility, and that's just not a realistic construct. And I credit them for, I mean, in essence, John Bay's position is independent oversight, right? It's a version of that, and that's what's required. And some of this, you know, the guys down the road in Harrisburg, this is a structure where these guys, there wasn't a will situation. Nobody who sat on this board, at least anybody I've worked with, doesn't have any difference in what they want out of their jail than you guys, right? But it's complicated, and corrections has gotten far too complicated to think that you can have a group of elected officials meet once a month and meaningfully oversee this. Good on you guys for being ahead of the curve statewide and putting some structure in place so you add some independent expertise to make sure that what you're hearing and seeing is contextualized with good practice, and that's really critical. And I think that's what's represented here. And the guy who's gonna do all this, he's gotta make it all work in about a week or two, right?
In a week or two? Oh, okay.
Let me just say this, you know, I do work all over the country, and right now, there was a bunch of turnover in corrections directors, bunch of turnovers in law enforcement. A lot of people are getting out. It's the big retire. And when we interviewed Mr. Bay for the internal affairs position at the first interview, it just made absolutely no sense to go any other direction. It's so obvious. And the thing, I want to tell you one story that stuck out to me. I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder, but you'll work it out.
No,
All right.
No,
but
go ahead, please.
when he was in Lancaster, you know, in the chief of police, George Floyd era, and I will tell you, as a black man who's run a large criminal justice agency, can't even imagine how difficult it was at that point in time. Because you don't separate your identities, you take them all with you, right? So in talking to John about working through that, right? I mean, talked about community engagement, and he talked about assessing the community's perception of the local police. And he made this bold move that I think is brilliant and I think would benefit Lancaster forever. And he took the community engagement folks and he moved their office to the front of the lobby in the police station. So if you wanted to file a complaint, you didn't have to interact with a police officer. It didn't cost Lancaster a freaking cent. But it shows that he cares about what the community says. He's not gonna do everything you tell him to do, but he cares about it. I think that's what you need. And you got the right guy. You should be really happy. And I'm happy to introduce John Bay as your new criminal justice.